In today's podcast episode, I want to talk about navigating the storm and managing stress and anxiety. So, one of the things that I have struggled with throughout my life, I suppose I could say, is anxiety. And I used to have very, very minimal anxiety when I was a teenager, really in middle school, probably starting in middle school up through high school and college. I had anxiety, but it was very stable, I would say. I sometimes managed it with medications, with a medication, just one medication. Sometimes, most of the time, I was off of anxiety medications. And I really didn't feel like the medication made a difference, anyways. But I dated a guy in college, right out of high school and in college, and he was against anxiety medications. When I met him, I was on an anxiety medication, and so I weaned off of it, went off of it, and I seemed to do okay. So I didn't think I needed anxiety medications. Well, throughout my adulthood, and into having children, I still had some underlying anxiety, but really generalized. It was not affecting my day-to-day living at all. I had three babies with, really minimal anxiety related to pregnancy and their deliveries and raising them. And then all of a sudden, this huge storm came in and disrupted my entire life, my entire being. And that storm ended up being anxiety. But I didn't realize it was anxiety because it presented itself completely different than what I had ever known my anxiety to be. And in fact, in the beginning, the first couple months of navigating this storm, I didn't think it was anxiety related, what was going on with me. The doctors didn't feel it was anxiety or mental health related. And I was in a really, really scary, scary part of my life because I was having all of these symptoms and all of these feelings. And I literally felt like I was going to die daily. And the doctors didn't think that it was anxiety, and I didn't think it was anxiety. So it caused, I feel, even more anxiety because we didn't know what was going on. I ended up in the emergency room after taking an Imitrex for the first time. I had been suffering from headaches, pretty significant headaches and I was in a cluster of headaches I think I'd had a headache every day for like a month. I was shooting a wedding, which, if you don't know, I have done photography part-time for a long time, for many, many years. At that time, it was fall. I do not shoot weddings, photograph weddings, and I really didn't at that time either, but I did take on this wedding. My sister went with to help. It was up north and it was fall. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. We got to stay in this little cabin. It was that part was great and fun and fine. But I remember talking to my sister about my headaches, and my sister has always suffered from headaches and migraines, and so does my son. But she said, well, I think that these are migraines and you need to get something, a medication or something to help with them because you shouldn't be having a headache every day, which I'm a nurse. I know this. So I went into the doctor. He put me on amitriptyline to help with the headaches. And then if I got a migraine, I was to take an Imitrex. So one night I was putting our youngest Colton to bed and I got a significant migraine. And so I said, fine, I will take an Imitrex. I took an Imitrex and within not long, I don't remember if it was 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but no more than an hour for sure. I all of a sudden got this kind of buzzing sensation. I can't remember if I had ringing in my ears, but I remember my fingers like tingling and I felt like I was kind of going numb. And so we called 911. they took me into the ER, the local ER. My blood pressure and heart rate were through the roof. And I was diagnosed with a medication reaction to Imitrex, and at home I went to not take that anymore. And about a month later, the same thing happened. And I didn't take a medication, or I didn't take the Imitrex. And so then I realized this is not a medication reaction to the Imitrex, since I'm not on Imitrex. And then we didn't know what was going on. Looking back, it's kind of silly to not realize that it was anxiety related, but I had never had any of these weird sensations and symptoms, and they were really scary. And, so anyways, life kept moving forward. I ended up in the ER 3 or 4 times, I think. I ended up with a heart monitor for a couple days to see, because the doctors thought there was something wrong with my heart. Then we thought maybe it was a brain tumor or MS. I had an MRI. I mean, I had everything done and tested for under the moon. I was literally convinced I had MS because I had so many of the symptoms of MS. I had significant face and head pressure. I had, at one point it felt like my legs were super heavy and I had bands around my legs and I could hardly get them to move when I wanted to move. I remember it was my youngest son's birthday, and I remember just crying to my dad because at that point, I couldn't help with my kids a whole lot. I was so scared that something was going to happen to me, not to my kids, but to me, and that my children were so young that they wouldn't know how to call 911. They wouldn't know what to do. I knew how long now that the ambulance took to get to my house, plus the ambulance that shows up at my house, since we live in the middle of nowhere, is a volunteer ambulance and people, and they are great, but they aren't able to start an IV or give me meds or anything. And so I thought I was going to die. And I thought my family would be better off without me, not in the sense of I was suicidal. I never felt suicidal, but I felt like I was a burden because I was dealing with all of this stuff and doctor's visits. I was off work. I think I was off work for 3 months. I didn't drive for almost 2 months, I believe. I wouldn't be alone with my kids, all of this stuff. And I just felt like I was this huge burden to my family, and I could not get myself out of it. And finally, I was seeing 2 therapists at one point, only because through my work, they have like a employee assistance program. And so you can go to a therapist for, I think it's like 6 or 8 times free. And so I started with her, but then my insurance covered elsewhere. And so I started with another gal and then switched over to this other therapist who was amazing. And she helped me just really come to terms with the fact at this point, we knew it was anxiety and a panic disorder, and I was having significant severe panic attacks. And I came to terms with that fact, and we could work through how do we move on from there, because I just so desperately wanted to feel better, but I couldn't get out of these feelings. And it was like when one symptom would get better, a different one would come in. So I had all kinds of feelings, and they were very much real. But many of them you couldn't see. The only things you could see or know was happening was when I would get into one and went to the ER, my blood pressure would go through the roof. I think at one point it was like 200s over 100 and some, which is super high for anyone and super high for me. Normally my blood pressure runs low, and I'm lucky if I'm 100 over 60. So for it to be well over double that, and then they were giving me medications to bring that down, which made me nervous because if you give those medications to my normal blood pressure, it would go too low. So they could tell that my blood pressure was through the roof in these episodes, and my heart rate was through the roof, but my breathing was pretty normal. I would get clammy, which maybe you could tell, maybe you couldn't, but then I would have some twitching. So it wasn't a ton, but sometimes my eye or around my eye would twitch. And that was the only things that people could see. Otherwise, it was all things going on that I could feel, but nobody else could see. My face would go numb. I felt like I had bands around my legs or ankles. I kept track of it, but I had a lot of tingling, like, when your leg falls asleep, kind of stuff like that. I had, of course, the feeling where you're like in a room and it's closing in around you, but I didn't actually have that one as much as you hear about with anxiety or a panic attack. Things slowing down, echoing, buzzing and ringing in my head and ears, and all of these things. At one point, things were starting to get better. I thought I went actually back to work as an RN. I tried to go back. I don't know if I even made it a week. And all of a sudden, I got this complete head to toe burning sensation where my whole body felt like it was on fire. It was so hot, like it was burning. And I remember calling my boss at the time and trying to tell her what I was feeling. And she wanted me to go to the ER. And I was like, I'm not going, because what are they going to tell me? They're going to not be able to do anything for me, or they're going to give me a medication that I don't want. And so luckily, I ended up seeing a therapist. I got out of just that overwhelming situation. I did go back on or go on a different anxiety medication. And now today I'm on one just starting dose of an anxiety medication. I no longer am seeing a therapist right now, and I'm doing overall really, really well. But that's not to minimize this. I spent months, if not years, working with a therapist and working on myself and just trying to overcome my anxiety. And I don't think it'll ever be gone completely, but I just wanted it more manageable. And nowadays, I am very focused on trying to eliminate anything that may cause my anxiety to spike. However, in saying that, I'm also really wanting to face my fears, because as this has all happened, I now have more fears that I never had before. As an adult, maybe, or after having kids, I have more fears. I never used to have a fear of flying. I have a fear of flying. I don't like heights. I don't have a fear of heights, but I don't love being up super high. We were in Tennessee on a vacation one time, and we went to the Smoky Mountains to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We went on the lift, the lift up, like the ski lift up to, I can't remember what it was called, but up to the mountain, and we walked across this bridge, this very high up rope bridge, and we walked across it, and I was scared, but I faced my fear and I did it. We went whitewater rafting that same trip with friends, which was my idea, and I almost backed out because my anxiety was getting the best of me, my fear, but I was facing my fears. And so I've been doing that more and more, and it's helped, but just focusing on self-care, focusing on not trying to do it all myself, really coming to terms with who I am, following my heart and what I need and what I want is also helping to overcome some of this anxiety. And so I wanted to not only share my story, but also talk to you about some causes of stress and anxiety and what things can happen. So we're not exactly sure what triggered my significant anxiety or my spike in anxiety and then a complete panic disorder and attacks and all of that. I think there was multiple things at play, but it's interesting because looking back, there were times in my life before my mental health breakdown, I say, before that, where I was way more stressed, way more overwhelmed, way more exhausted, way more in the thick of it than I was when it happened, and nothing ever popped up then. Our middle son Bryson was severely sick as an infant, and when he was 2.5 weeks old, he got RSV and ended up up in the cities, up in Minnesota, Minneapolis, at the Children's Hospital for 18 days. He was intubated. We almost lost him. And that was obviously one of the most traumatic and stressful times of my life. And I didn't have a panic attack up there. I didn't have a panic attack through it. My anxiety, I mean, yes, I was stressed, right? I was worried for him completely, but these things didn't happen. And so what were the causes? And sometimes we don't know, but sometimes things build up. And sometimes I think, or maybe what happened was we're in this fight or flight for so long. And then when things settle down a little bit and things even out and your body is getting almost into a relaxed state of being, that then our bodies are like, wait a minute, alert, alert, something's not right. We were, dealing with all this stuff, and now we're just kind of coasting and things seem good. This isn't right. And our brains, our bodies, our subconscious freak out a little bit. And so, but there can be triggers. And so some of those common triggers can be financial triggers or financial pressures. We, before my mental health breakdown, we were struggling with a lot of debt, a lot of personal debt. And so was that something that maybe triggered it? Work-related stress. I was getting really burnt out as being a hands-on hospice nurse. And I've never felt very comfortable and at home and confident in being a nurse. And as much as I actually loved being bedside with hospice, I think that built up and I burnt out from that. So work-related stress can be a big one. Health issues. If you or your loved ones have health issues going on, that can be a trigger. If there's something going on with your personal relationships, if your marriage or your relationship with your partner, friends or parents or relatives or anybody, if those relationships are falling apart or something's going on there, life transitions and uncertainty. I've realized through this whole journey and working on myself that I don't like uncertainty, and most people don't. But sometimes we don't realize that. I never realized that I like structure. I like having a plan. I like having a backup plan. I never knew this about myself. And so those are some things, really focusing on yourself, investing in yourself and learning all you can about who you really are and what you want will help you tremendously in life, even if you don't have stress and anxiety. I mean, we all have stress, right? And I kind of think that most of us have a little bit of anxiety, underlying anxiety. And some of that is actually good. It's a way to protect ourselves. It's a way for our body to protect our human selves so that we don't get into sticky situations and dangerous situations. But we can also have too much of that. And so learning more about yourself will help help you overall in life. So one of the things that I needed to recognize were some of the symptoms leading up to the huge kind of breakdown and blow up that I had. So again, I was having a lot of headaches. So some people have headaches, fatigue, muscle tension, issues sleeping. Either you can't fall asleep, you're sleeping too much. So changes in sleep, just complete exhaustion, irritability, feeling of sadness or overwhelm, changes in your appetite, social withdrawal. That's a huge one. These are just some of the things that can happen that are showing us, our body is trying to show us that we're getting stressed, that we're anxious, that something is going on and we need to pay attention. Those are some of the things that actually were happening to me leading up to this, but I didn't realize, I didn't notice, or I didn't put it together, right? So I have always just assumed that this and thought for a long time that this severe anxiety happened out of nowhere. It just all of a sudden hit me. But again, looking back now, I can see the warning signs, the red flags, the headaches, the tiredness, the just feeling super overwhelmed and on edge, irritable. Through this journey, I was super irritable, like just with the kids and with my husband. And I felt like I wanted to be alone, but I didn't want to be alone. And so just some of that stuff. So I also wanted to share some practical coping techniques with you so that if you are noticing some of these things, you can help cope with what's going on. So hopefully it doesn't become larger than it already is, or you can minimize it and bring it down. So some techniques to help manage stress and anxiety is mindfulness practices. So what are those? Well, sometimes it's meditation. It can be breathing exercises. Truth be told, in the beginning, though, I struggled with breathing exercises. Everybody told me, focus on your breathing, breathe in and breathe out. And there's this like squared breathing and these like second, like four, I don't even know, something seconds breathing, where you like breathe in and you hold it, and then you exhale and you hold it. And I would get more anxious and feel like I was going to pass out when I did that. But now I can do it. Now I love taking deep breaths and just focusing on my breathing. But in the beginning, it did not work for me. It did the opposite. So all of these are things that you can try. And if it makes it worse, stop. Don't say you can't ever do it, but just stop and focus on something else. There's different relaxation techniques. There's different muscle relaxations. There's different things that you can YouTube and search up and read about, and all the things to just help be a little bit more relaxed, be a little bit more mindful, to help you cope with what is going on. Then there's lifestyle adjustments, right? So it's really, really important to have a good balanced diet. I am the first to admit that this is not my strong suit, but I'm working on it. Getting enough exercise, getting enough water intake. These things are important. What we put in our body is fueling us, and it is helping us to manage everyday stressors, because there is stress in every day. And I always say good stress is still stress. So one of the things I was doing right before my big breakdown was, I don't know what to call it, so I just always call it my big mental health breakdown or whatever, crisis. But I was trying to leave my nursing job and do photography full time. And I was really again, I was burning out from being bedside and hands-on nursing. And I was doing photography and it was going well. And so I wanted to do that. Well, we don't have the right studio for me to do that, I felt, full time. And so we were looking at different buildings. We were looking at renting a spot in town. We were doing all those things. I was going to go to in-person sales. I was going to sell products instead of just like a digital package. And so it felt exciting and good, but it was also stressful. And so sometimes, not sometimes, often, um, when I'm working on things that I love and it's work related, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel stressful. And so I do this with my coaching business. I've done this with my photography business where I love it so much and I get excited about it. And then I realize that it is still stress, right? Good stress, exciting stress is still stress, and it can have impacts on us, even though we don't necessarily realize that. So just be mindful of that if that's you. That's why with my coaching business and with my podcast and with all of these things, exciting things happening in my business, I have to be mindful that I can get burnt out and I can go too much too quick. I'm saying it wrong, but you get the point. Like I get something in my mind and I go Mach 80 to accomplish it. I did this with our debt payoff. And so I have to take time to take breaks. I need to go for walks. I try to go on a daily walk, do things so that I don't get overwhelmed. And so if that's you, and that really is everybody, we need to be taking breaks and taking time for ourselves. One of the things that is super important as well is self-care. And it can mean different things to everybody. Finding a hobby or something that you enjoy, reading, if that's something you enjoy, getting massages. It's not just a bubble bath and a massage, but taking time for yourself. One of the biggest changes in the last year is that I joined a connection group, and it's the Polka Dot Powerhouse is what it's called for women. And it's business related, but it's also personal as well. And I do one-on-one connections, they're called. And so I meet with these women, these amazing women, one-on-one, usually in person, but they can be virtual as well. And we just meet for half an hour to an hour usually. And I try to do at least one a week, if not more than that. And we are just meeting and talking and connecting. Some go deeper, some are a little bit not as deep. And taking time to get to know other people and invest in other people. And you're also investing in yourself. Taking time to spend with family and friends is huge. You will never get this time back. And so one of the things that I have come to terms with is that my business is going to grow a little bit slower than I originally anticipated and that I honestly wanted, because I'm not willing to go back to where I was mentally. I'm not willing to miss out on all of my kids' activities, and I'm not willing to put 110% into my business because I'm taking that from my family and from myself. As much as I love my business and I love working on it and growing it and building it, and it just fills me, it fills my cup, I also know that it takes away from other areas of my life, and I cannot do it all, and I can't do it all myself. And so that's one of the things that I want you to think about is, what are you able to delegate in life and business? If you don't have a business, that's fine. What can you delegate in the house? What can you ask for help with? What could you swap with another mom or another neighbor or something like that, so that it's not all on you? Because I have felt that way most of my motherhood journey, is that I felt like it was all on me to get the kids to daycare and to school and to pick them up and to manage their activities and their schedule and my schedule. I was working, I was cooking, I was cleaning, I was raising the kids, I was doing it all. And my husband's wonderful and he's helped as much as he can. But in the beginning, he wasn't home a whole lot. He farms and he was farming a lot and he was gone a lot. And we had 3 little boys at home that I was navigating, parenting. And many times, 6, 8 months out of the year, I felt like I was a single mom. And then we had them in hockey, which love hockey, but it's really intense, the schedule and practices and all of that. And in the beginning, I was doing a lot of it on my own. And then shit blew up, right? Then this whole mental health breakdown happened. And it's interesting how it's changed our dynamics. My husband is around a lot more than he used to be. He's still very busy. We're both very busy, but we are in communication more. He's trying to help fill that role, that second parent role, or that parent role really more. And he's always been good about taking the kids in with him farming, but it's not easy, right? Like it's not easy to drive a tractor combine with little kids and one, two, or three little kids. But taking the time to communicate with those in your circle and spending the time needed on yourself is key. One of the other things is to create a personalized action plan. So your action plan will have, you're going to identify your stressors. So what are the things that you know that stresses you out? Create a list, get out a paper and pen and write this down. Identify your stressors. And then I want you to set clear boundaries personally and professionally. So what are those? My boundaries, I'm not good at boundaries, but I have gotten better at them. Work boundaries. I will not work past 9 p.m. at night, no matter what. However, typically it's much earlier than that. Usually I am not working into the evening hours in the summer for sure. In the winter, it's different because my boys, again, are hockey players. And so we are at the hockey rink most evenings a week. And so I actually bring my work there. And it's a good time for me to focus on my business and have the children, the boys, occupied with their hockey. So a lot of parents drop their kids off at hockey practice, they leave and they go home or they go run errands or whatnot. We don't live close enough to town to do that typically. So I bring my work with me, but I do this only for their practices. You will not find me sitting there working when they have their games. Every once in a while, I have to miss a game for work, but that is rare. So set clear boundaries on your work schedule. Set clear boundaries on your relationships. What things are you willing to allow in your life and what things are you not? And it's okay to cut people out of your life if you need to. I have done this. And not to say that those people were necessarily bad people, but if the energy is too much, I had a really close friend and we no longer talk. And it hurt me. It hurt her. I know it did. But the energy there was draining. And I had to put up a boundary. I just could not do that relationship any longer. And again, it was really a difficult decision. It's not one I took lightly. It had been years coming, but I created that boundary. She's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person. That boundary needed to be set. Incorporate again the mindfulness and the relaxation techniques. These are huge. They may sound a little woo-woo, but they aren't, and they are huge. And whatever that looks like for you is great. Whatever you find that works for you is wonderful. And then establish in your plan, make sure that you have a place where you can write down a healthy routine and healthy habits. So I have a healthy habit around my sleep schedule. It's not often I stay up past 10:30 or 11 at night. It's pretty rare. I struggle with insomnia. I finally realized that's what it was. I always said I had issues sleeping forever, as far back as I can remember. My dad is the same way. But it's insomnia. And so I have to set those habits and keep the routine. And so I go to bed usually around 10, give or take every night. And I'm up between 7 and, well, sometimes earlier than that, but usually I'm up by 7 every morning. On the weekends, sometimes I'll sleep until 8, but it's fairly rare. And I just keep that routine. So staying up till 2 in the morning on the weekends and sleeping until 11 isn't in my life. I just don't have the capability to do that because I struggle with the sleeping. And so I want to set up those healthy routines and habits, and I want that for you as well. So again, some of the things that have helped me is asking for help, which I'm still not great at, but asking for help, setting boundaries, finding a purpose. I have, I didn't want to finish nursing school. I didn't want to become a nurse. I did, and then I didn't. And I felt forced into finishing, and I finished. And I've been a nurse for about 15 years, and I have not loved it. It's not been awful. There's been times where it's been awful, but it hasn't been awful my whole career. But I have not loved it. I've never felt like that was where I was supposed to be, but I felt very stuck. And that can be a really yucky place to be. Finding a purpose has helped me tremendously. Coaching women, doing financial coaching, and even like life coaching and business coaching, however you want to look at it, has helped me so much. So finding your purpose, your passion and purpose in life is going to help so much. Having a financial plan, paying down our debt helped me again tremendously. So I had already gone through my breakdown, but then we got into this crisis situation, which if you've listened to this podcast or have followed me on social media for any amount of time, you probably know the story. But we ended up paying off $100,000 of debt in less than 2 years. We went through this big journey, and now I'm teaching others about finances and how to be not perfect, but how to be a little more responsible with our money and having a financial plan, a financial mission. Hence why the podcast is called Financial Mission. Another thing that has helped me, less work, more play, more rest, and more relaxation. I don't rest and relax very often, or it's hard for me to do that. But now I know it's super important. So I don't necessarily always feel like I need to just relax. Sometimes I do or rest, but I force myself to do it, and it has helped me tremendously. Practicing gratitude has been huge. What are we grateful for? And reminding ourselves of that. There are always people out there that are worse off. And just reminding myself of that, plus being grateful for what I have instead of focusing on what I don't have or how far I've come versus how far left I have to go. We're always improving and changing and learning and growing. And that is amazing. But sometimes we feel like we're just never getting to the point where we want to get. But being grateful for where we are and how far we've come is key. Seeking therapy has helped me tremendously. I cannot say that enough, that if you are struggling, especially with your mental health, a therapist is key. A good therapist is key. It may take a couple people, a couple therapists to find your niche, to find your person, but just having a safe place and a safe person to talk to and talk things out and not feeling judged and it's all confidential was huge. It was huge for me, and I felt very safe. I felt very heard, and I could move forward in my healing journey. Hiring a coach. I have my own coach. I have a business coach. Hiring a financial coach if you're struggling with your finances. Hiring a life coach. Hiring someone to be your support, to be your someone who can guide you, to be your person that you can go to, you can learn from, you can grow from. That is also key. And then accepting my anxiety while realizing I now have control over it. I can now manage it. I can feel my anxiety rising. Sometimes I literally get back into those feelings and I can squash it down, but it's taken me years to get there. But realizing, accepting that it's anxiety, acknowledging, naming it, and then having the ability to talk myself out of it and to tell those feelings that they don't have control over me has helped a ton. I want you to be empowered to take control of your stress and anxiety and to learn how to manage it. Because even if you don't have anxiety, life is stressful, right? Things are moving so fast. Our lives, we've never been busier. We've never been able to accomplish as much in one day as ever before. And that's great in one aspect, but it's really hard in another because it can be really overwhelming. We are constantly being fed information, and sometimes we just need to shut everything off and just be still, be quiet. If you believe in God, I'm a Christian woman, and so I pray a lot more. I have started to read Bible verses and get into the Bible a little bit more. I still have a lot of growth and opportunity to grow in that area, but taking time to just be with yourself, to just be mindful, to feed yourself positive thoughts, positive words, positive affirmations, and to find peace amidst life's chaos. And remember to develop your own personalized plan, because what works for me might not work for you. Again, in the beginning, when people were telling me over and over to breathe and do my breathing techniques, I wanted to scream because it made it worse. So find what works for you and stick with that. Learn the techniques to cope and build resilience. And then also try to understand, if it's there, what some of the underlying causes are. Again, cut off ties with people that are not healthy, good for you. If you are in toxic relationships, those have got to go. We cannot improve ourselves if our relationships are toxic, if our work environment is toxic. I don't work my nursing job. I don't love it, but it's not a toxic environment, right? So I don't need to piece out of there right now, but finding a purpose, finding something you can do on the side of your job, if that isn't bringing you purpose. If you are struggling with your job, think about other avenues you could take to eventually leave that job or that career. It's not going to happen overnight, and I don't necessarily think it should. And our growth, our development comes in the journey. And sometimes it, more so than not, it takes a lot longer than what we think it's going to take. But again, investing in yourself, knowing yourself, finding ways to manage your anxiety, to manage the stress, even the good stress. It's all about building layers and becoming resilient and giving yourself grace, because it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. But knowing that there's still going to be hard days, but there's so many more good days. And if you are struggling with your mental health, again, seek help, seek professional help in terms of see your doctor, see a provider, see a therapist. Do not wait, because life is so much better when you have things managed. It's not perfect, but when you have it managed, it is so much better. I hope that by me sharing this very personal story with you, that it has helped you in some way. And I hope that you really take the time to figure out who you are, because it's taken me years to get to a place where I really truly feel like I know who I am. I know what I want, maybe not forever, things change, but I know who I am. I know what I want. I know what fills my bucket. And I just know me a lot better than I used to. And I'm 37. So it's taken me a little bit of time to get here. So it's never too late. No matter where you are in your journey, no matter your age, anything, it's not too late to start focusing and investing in you. So as always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy life and schedule to listen to the Financial Mission podcast. If this helped you, if you think this episode would help somebody else, please share it with them. As always, make today a great day, because we have so very much to be grateful and thankful for.